And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Ella LeBain, author, ET experiencer, historian, and researcher. Today we're going to be talking about how the end-time prophecies and UFOs are related and more. Ella, welcome back. It's great to have you again.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It's good to see you again.
Ella, I think we should just jump right into it and start with how ETs and the prophecies are related to each other.
Yes, well, that's a great question. One of the big pieces of the end time prophecy is the 7-year tribulation, which is also known as the 7-year reign of the Antichrist. And the Christians call it the Antichrist, but the same being seems to show up in multiple prophecies. So we can connect the dots that the end time Antichrist, we can also call a counterfeit Messiah. Okay, so let's just take the life of Yeshua for example, because most of the world believes he was the Messiah. He is the Messiah. So the prophecy says that someone will come along before he returns, okay, and be a pretender, someone who will mimic his life, okay, and deceive what it says will be 1/3 of the world, okay, or 25, Israel, okay, so somehow it's all focused on Israel. Everything comes out of Israel, okay, and the end time war is over Israel, is with Israel. So Ezekiel chapter 38 is about the end time war, which is called the War of Gog and Magog. Okay, so who is Gog and Magog? Well, historically speaking, these were ancient words, ancient names for these ancient lands that have since been changed. So one is Persia, which is Iran today, and then the other one is the lands that cover what we call Turkey, and it's goes over the Scythians, which is like the Ukraine and all that land that borders Russia. So there's a whole lot of history there, and let's not forget that that Turkey used to be the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire used to rule over Israel. Israel has changed empires multiple times. There's a whole long history there. So they want there's this ancient battle going on that is coming back for a final last hurrah, a final battle over this land. And why is this land always fought over? Well, in my opinion, it has to do with ancient space portals. Okay, so what we see on the surface, there's multi-dimensionality to Israel. There's portals. So for instance, Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, which in Hebrew means the city of peace, Yerushalayim. And it's interesting because it's the eye of the storm, and all this warfare surrounds it. But according to the ancient Sumerian texts, Jerusalem used to be this ancient space portal. Zechariah Sitchin wrote about it. And there's no coincidence that they used to land on these mountains there, come and go on the mountains. For instance, Jesus, Yeshua, when he left, the angel said when he went up to heaven and everybody looked up and they said, "What are you looking at?" And he went into a cloud. And in my books, the clouds are spaceships. And I proved that through Hebrew linguistics, that they were cloaked in cloud cover. Some of them were glory clouds and others were other types of clouds, technology, which we're seeing today too, but that they moved very, very fast. Anyway, he went up into a cloud and the angels said to the disciples, "What are you looking at?" The way he left is exactly where he's going to return, which was in Jerusalem on these mountains. So these portals. And so suffice to say that that's a very big piece, okay, is like what was in the past will be again, but it's coming back for resolution, for a final resolution. So it has to do with who gets to control this realm that we call planet Earth and even the solar system. And then there's been this cosmic battle over this, and it goes way back to Nibiru. Okay, so the information that the ancient Sumerians left on the cuneiform tablets that have to do with the battles that went on over in the Bible, it talks about the stones of fire, which are the planets in this solar system, and how they always keep coming around. Okay, every 3,600 years, it seems to come in, intersect in our solar system, and we're seeing the evidence of this now. We're seeing it around the sun. And a lot of people think that it's just one object or just one planet. It's a system. Okay, so Nibiru is a system. It's attached to our binary twin, which we call Nemesis, which is a brown dwarf star that's dead, but yet it still dances with our sun. So most of the time it's behind the sun, but every couple of thousand years it comes to the side. So that's why people are seeing two suns at sunrise, two suns, twin sunsets, because even though it doesn't radiate anymore, when our sun illuminates it, it looks like another sun, just like it does with, Venus and other planets. It illuminates it. So we're seeing that. We're seeing that there's earth changes and climate change, and all of this is prophesied. All of this is what's supposed to happen at the end. So it's a final test for the world, but focused on Israel as to who the true Messiah is. So because of what happened 2,000 years ago and how it happened, and everything is layered in these prophecies. The prophecies were fulfilled when Yeshua walked the earth, when he died, when he was resurrected, when he ascended, and when he returns. So I stand kind of in the middle of both of this because I was born Jewish, and Jews are not supposed to believe in Jesus. But, I've seen him 6 times, and, no one can convince me otherwise because he's real and he's still alive, even though, most people can't see him, but, people who believe in him and talk to him, he talks, there's an ongoing intimate relationship with believers. Okay, so believers know who he is. He shows up for people all the time. He's been showing up a lot lately in Gaza. Okay, so since what's happened October, yeah, I know the stories are just astonishing. They're just so amazing. Since what happened with the war, October 7th of 23, so a lot of the Muslims there, and there's so much oppression and depression and everything, and they themselves have been betrayed by their own leaders, and so Yeshua has been showing up in their dreams, giving them dreams and visions, and like hundreds of Muslims have turned to Christ. They've left Islam. We were seeing that trend start when ISIS was kind of big, but ISIS is kind of like part of this like 10-headed dragon that just keeps changing its names. It's all the same ancient like evil force, and that is Jihad. Okay, we'll just come out and say it. They can be called Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, ISIS, Daesh. It doesn't matter what name you put on them. They all have this desire to basically take Israel, take Jerusalem, and genocide the Jews. And that's an ancient thing, nothing new under the sun. This has been going on. So Ezekiel chapter 38 specifically talks about this war against Israel, which they call Gog and Magog. And these are ancient names for these countries that have now recently teamed up. So in my lifetime, I mean, I lived when, Iran, women used to wear bikinis, I mean, it was a secular nation. People went there on vacation. The same thing with Turkey. It was like a cool place to go and have a vacation and look at all the ancient ruins. But both of these countries have been taken over by jihadists. They're Muslim theocracies now. And Erdogan, who runs Turkey, he said this is no conspiracy and no secret, this is out there. He wants to lead the caliphate, the Muslim caliphate. So this ties right into the prophecy, because that's what it says is supposed to happen, that there's these 10 nations that used to be part of the old Roman Empire. So when you look at the map and the geography, when Rome was ruling the world, it was before Islam. So Islam came, around 350, 750 AD, 350 AD, 325, between 325 and 350 is when Constantine took over. And that's when they basically made a church doctrine of replacement theology, and that became the official church doctrine of anti-Semitism. So I proved this through history, okay, and also through scripture. So because every time I see something in history, I connect the dot to what it says in the scripture and the prophecies, and showing how this is what's already been fulfilled and what we have left to do. So, okay, so around 750 AD, the Church of Rome wanted to take Jerusalem, okay, and they went after Muhammad, who was a known warrior caste family. Like that was his lineage, but he was illiterate. So they sent monks, okay, the Roman the church from the Church of Rome to train him, and the Pope wanted to use him to take Jerusalem. So that's how pretty much the Quran got written, which is why the Quran is it looks like almost like it's plagiarized from the Bible. It has the Old and the New Testament, except it's kind of twisted, like it's the same stories, but it's just with a different twist on it. And the monks helped them write that because he was illiterate. So they did train him. He did go. They did take Jerusalem, and he didn't give it to Rome. So that piece of history, and then of course the Crusades, and these wars that went on between the Christians and the Muslims and the Jews. I mean, this is what the end times converge. Okay, it's the same old story, just with modern technology and artificial intelligence thrown in. And that's an important piece, because this being that Christians call the Antichrist seems to fit the bill for what Jews, right? Because most Jews have rejected the notion that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah, okay? But that remains to be seen, okay? So we'll put that on the side for now, because that hasn't been resolved yet. So they believe that that there's going to be a Messiah that's going to save them from their enemies. So there's going to be this end time war with Islam, with these 10 nations, which is led by Iran and Turkey, ancient Persia, ancient Magog, and to take over Israel and Jerusalem. So this person, this being, comes up, emerges out of this war, and literally makes peace. So he's seen as a peacemaker, as a prince of peace, and he he's able to do a treaty, an agreement between Israel and her enemies. And so the Jews in Israel think, oh, he must be the Messiah because he's come to save us, right? And that's the first hook. Okay, it's a deception, all right? And so not only does he do that, but he also rebuilds the third temple. And that's a very big, important piece, because once you see that happening, you can just count down that we're very close to the end. So for the first 3.5 years, there is a false peace, and the temple is rebuilt. They have everything they need to build this temple. It's not about resources or materials or anything like that. It's about this portal and this agreement that, the Muslims are blocking it. Okay, but when this person comes along, he's the only one that seems to be able to get through to these Muslims, and where they decide, because there's economy going on there. So the end time prophecy, suffice to say, is a one world government, a one world currency, which we can see already happening with Bitcoin, using artificial intelligence for digital debits and credits, and they're going to do away with all the monies, and there won't be any currency, and you know changes, through Europe and America, and all that kind of stuff is going to get like leveled out. And he does this. He's some kind of financial genius that seems to order this all together and resolves these issues. And he pulls fire down from heaven, it says. So that is biblical vernacular for alien technology. So he has something to do with the alien group, one of the alien groups. So this is where it ties into disclosure and what's happening now. And then, okay, so he builds the temple. The Jews think he's their Messiah. The Muslims even think he might even be their Mahdi. They're waiting for their Messiah. And the Jews, it says that they reinstate animal sacrifices like they did in the past. And that's when the world, goes after and says, no, like the PETA movements and all these people say it's you can't do this. So the Antichrist lends an ear to them and stops it. The scripture, the prophecy says he ends the animal sacrifices. Okay, and when that happens, he demands the Jews to worship him. Okay, he gets shot, or it says that there's a more like a fatal wound to his head, and he comes back to life. So this is the counterfeit, the mimic of the life of Christ, where he dies and then he comes back to life, and then that gives him more, power and of belief that he must be supernatural, that he must be the Messiah, that he must be somebody really special. And he gets all these people to go, and he's very like well spoken, like very articulate. So he has this power of speech that is able to kind of like lure people in, it says. So we've had many people along our historical timeline that have done that. Okay, even in recent history. And we can look back at that and say how people get kind of like mesmerized and hypnotized by words. So he does that. But when he stops the animal sacrifices in the temple and he demands the Jews to worship him as God, that's when all hell breaks loose, it says. So there's this 3.5 years of peace, and then 3.5 years of absolute total nightmarish mayhem, worse than the World War II Holocaust. So it says that he beheads everyone who doesn't worship him. So when we look at these words in the prophecy, it's very specific. It says beheadings. So who does beheadings? anymore. Only the Muslims. This is their thing. It's part of their, they believe it's like part of their religion. So we can say that these players, the cast of characters, we know who they will be and where they're going to be coming from. So this is all part of it.
Are you saying that this Antichrist person will be human or an ET?
Great question. He's going to appear human. Okay, there's many ETs that look human, appear human, even can shapeshift into humans and maybe not be human. So he's going to be a composite of people in the past. Some people believe that he's going to be the reincarnation of King Nebuchadnezzar, Nimrod, Apollo. I mean, I've heard all kinds of things. And the reason why I pay attention to that is because I've seen stories about militaries on the earth that have gone into these tombs, ancient tombs, and collected DNA and have tried to reverse engineer and create like a transhuman, like a hybrid transhuman, which is like this has been going on this planet for decades. I mean, this is part of the alien human hybridization program, which is the point of abductions. Okay. So they're, taking pieces of us and, mixing it with alien DNA. So I wouldn't be surprised, let's put it that way, if this person was some kind of a hybrid, okay, of that. But suffice to say, he has to kind of match these prophecies in order for the Jews to accept him. So somehow he has, like, he's either part Jewish and part Muslim, or he's born into a certain family line and they recognize him because of that. Because let's face it, Jews, they look at people based on the past. And this is something that, this is why I'm writing this. I put this book together called The Cosmic Slingshot, is because there's so much controversy in Christianity about this, and Christians cannot understand the end time prophecy fully without this piece of knowledge of reincarnation, because the Church of Rome told them not to believe in reincarnation. So it became an implant and it became a belief system, and it's a false belief because Christianity came out of Judaism, and Judaism is the core belief is reincarnation. It's all over the Torah. It's all over all the ancient Jewish books that they rejected. It's the basis of everything. What happens to us after we die. It's called, in Hebrew, it's called kafakela, which is the cosmic slingshot. So you basically, the soul just goes like a slingshot back into the afterlife, and then it comes back into a body. So Jews will look at people. This has been going on for decades, but of course Christians just ignore it. They look at people and they determine, and there's like rabbis and Talmuds and Mishnahs and all this stuff is written about who these people were in the past and how this was the reincarnation of so-and-so. And so the Jews are going to look at that. This is all part of how they will perceive this final person, the Antichrist figure, who will come across as a Messiah at first. But he's going to deceive not only them, but the whole world. Okay, because that's what the prophecy says. And why people say, well, why would God let this happen? For an ultimate point that the king, the God of the universe, is proving to everyone, including the ETs, about him, and good and evil and light and dark and truth and lie. And it suffice to say that it's a lesson for all of us who live on the earth at this time to learn discernment, which is what I've been learning, what I've been teaching, what I've been sharing, and that's what my book series is all about.
Many people believe that we are in the end times, but it sounds like that we're not there yet until the Antichrist comes. Or am I reading that wrong?
No, I think when the time of the Antichrist is the final 7 years, but we are very close to that. So, that we may even live to see who this person is in our lifetime, you and I. I mean, this could happen in the next decade or so because of what because of the events that already have been put in motion. And that is this worldwide jihad. Okay. And this is something that we've been talking about for years, but people just don't want to they don't want to look at it. They don't want to talk about it. There's been like talk about a truth embargo. It's a suppression. Okay. And and it started with Obama. Okay. Because he was Muslim and he wanted to kind of like, oh, I'm not even going to go there, but he wanted, because the Muslims were being persecuted from 9/11. So he came to give them some power here. And, there's good Muslims and then there's the jihads. The Muslims are split. They're not on the same page. That's why there's an ongoing war between the Sunni and the Shias, and which is basically, the jihadists that they want to run everything based on theocracy, and then the other Muslims are, that's kind of cultural for them. They're not like religious like they are. They're more secular, and that's why you have this split in the Middle East. Okay, and they're against each other, and what's happening in Syria is another big piece of this. So there's this four-pronged war right now going on against Israel. This is all part of this Gog and Magog war, which is not only written in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, but it's also in the book of Revelation. So we can connect these dots that this is like what the world is preparing for, because this is a lot of it has to do with the past. So when I talk about reincarnation to Christians, they freak out because they're told not to believe in it. And they think, oh, does that mean we have to come back and do this all over again? It's not about the future necessarily, but it's more about the past. Okay. It's the fact that the past has a tendency to repeat itself. Okay. And we can philosophize all we want and say, well, why is that? And one reason is because people don't always learn the lessons of history. They keep repeating things. There's another reason that has to do with patterns, generational curses, and aliens. Okay, so the aliens, alien presence that I call it, because they've been here with us all along, and they're living with us. They're living interdimensional with our dimension. They're also living inside the planet. And we have evidence of this as we see them come out of the oceans and come out of mountains and come and they're coming and going. And there's so many things going on. And our government has known about this for a long time. Okay, this is part of the truth embargo. This is part of the cover up, is that they've been suppressing this information for lots of reasons. Okay, one of them, national security. They've been and we know this. They've told us this. This is out there. Reverse engineering alien craft, so that they've been amassing an interstellar fleet so that they can be equipped to defend themselves against a war with these aliens, with an alien race. And because there's multiple groups, so they're aligned with one or two or three groups, and so that they're being helped so that they can defend themselves against this other group. So the Antichrist spirit is in the world. Okay. And to define what that is this ancient rebellion against the creator God, against the God of Israel. It's that simple. And this ain't all the wars. I mean, I can connect the dots through the timeline, and every single one of them has been against this. So the God of Israel allows his people to get shuffled around. I mean, there's been two diasporas, and the Jews have been shuffled out. They've lost the land twice because some of it had to do with their own mistakes. Okay, so God, taught them lessons. They were punished, they were judged, and yet they were promised to return. Ezekiel 37 is the whole entire chapter is the reincarnation of ancient Israel. It's that simple. He promised Ezekiel that all the dead Israelites that had died in this war, and they were all buried in the ground, and he said, you see them all, they're going to live again. I'm going to put flesh on those bones, and those bones are going to live again. And I'm going to breathe my life into them, and they will live, and they will be a great army again. Well, look at the IDF. I mean, they're one of the most sophisticated, high-tech, advanced militaries on the planet, even though they're in a very small country. Okay, so a lot of stuff comes out of Israel. Here's a piece. At the end of 2020, when the world was under the pandemic, the retired space chief, Chaim Eshed of Israel, came out, you remember this,
Yeah.
and basically became a whistleblower at the age of 88, went to the Yedidot Achronot, which is like the equivalent of the New York Times here, and told them that the United States and Israel were in working agreements with the Galactic Federation on Earth. And those are important words, because we hear all this stuff, the Galactic Federation of Light, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, all these different words. But his words were very, very specific. The Galactic Federation on Earth. I take that very literally, because that means they're here. They're living with us. And this is what I proved in my first book, that the aliens aren't coming from outer space. Not that that doesn't exist. But that's not what we're seeing here. All these crashes and all this stuff that's happened over the past, 70, 75 years, since World War II, since Roswell, all this stuff, is that they're coming from inside the planet and the solar system. So the planet, and I mean, I can go into all these reasons why are they crashing? First of all, like why so many crashes? Because the planet is shifting. Okay, we've shifted like 45 degrees, or the North Magnetic Pole used to be over the Canadian Arctic, and now it's over Siberia, Russia. So that's like almost a 45-degree shift. The Earth is wobbling. The solar flares, which we're in the middle of right now, the solar maximum. In fact, we started the new year with an X class and a solar storm, and these solar flares that are coming, the sun is spewing. It's not just hitting the surface of the planet; it's going into the core. And it's affecting the earth wobble, the axis, which is why we have climate change. Okay, so that's another thing. So all of this is all part of the end time prophecy. Okay, we're in what we call birth pangs. So just like contractions, when a woman is ready to give birth, it might start off and then they're like 30 minutes apart, and then 20 minutes apart, and then 5, and then 10, and then until it's time. But in between contractions, you have a breath, you have a rest, right? So that's what we're experiencing. We get like, oh, really intense, and then things calm down, and then it gets really intense. And if you're watching the solar flares, it's been pretty consistent. Okay, and so it's been heating up the Earth's surface. The magnetosphere has got cracks in it. It's causing the Schumann resonance to raise. So that's we're all of us, our brains are wired into that. Okay, so that's why humans are affected, all sentient beings, animals as well. We're seeing, all kinds of effects from that. And that's all part of this end time prophecy, because it's a confluence of things. It's the surface war over this portal, over Israel, and yet there's this other planet that is coming into our solar space and intersecting, that is causing all these shifts. So when the last time we talked a year ago, when you were asking me about my near-death experience, and I was telling you what Yeshua told me, which got me down these rabbit holes, which is that he was returning with Nibiru. Okay, so that doesn't mean that he's coming from Nibiru, but his return coincides with the return of Nibiru. So it means that and that's why it's called a tribulation, because everything is happening all at once. So it's a confluence of things. So we have the surface stuff with the surface wars and the religious wars and the differences there, and they're spiritual and they're cosmic as well, because they're not just about spirits between humans, which is part of it, but they're also about this cosmic war between these aliens over who gets to control these space portals and Earth space.
Well, do you know which aliens are battling each other? Like, is it the Greys versus the Blue Avians, or?
Okay, so I'll tell you what I know. I know what I know. What I don't know, I don't know. So the reptilians, the draconians, okay, they they represent a major force on this planet, historically speaking, and in the end times. So they're a hierarchy, and they're holding on to what they believe is their space, okay, and they live inside the planet. So the Bible tells us this. There's tons of scriptures from the beginning, in the Jewish Torah all the way to the end of Revelation, interspersed about this serpent race. Okay, so we know that they're ancient. We know that they've been there a long time, and they don't come up to the surface. They use other beings to do that, such as the Greys. So in my first book, I had done all this research and published this, that according to whistleblowers, American government whistleblowers, there's 35 different species of Greys. So I spell it Gray, to distinguish between the Grey, the color gray, because the gray species can come in all colors. They can be gray, uh, beige, white, navy, blue, black, green, okay, olive color. They're all different colors because they're a combination of like cybergenetic hybrids that are hybridized with reptilian and insectoid and even human DNA. So one of the pieces that came out of some of the whistleblower material from Roswell, and this is stuff that they've been sitting on, that even Trump knows about, is that the species, the beings, the biologics, as David Grush calls it, when they were genetically, they did autopsies and they did all this genetic testing on them, they found that there was human DNA in them. And this also dovetails to what Chaim Eshed told us, and is in his book, okay, the universe and beyond. And I have this. Anyone who wants these 13, I have 13 pages that I've translated from his book because it's only available in Hebrew. So these are the parts that talk about the crashes and the aliens that were found. And he basically talks about all around the world, not just here in America. There was a crash in Italy, there was crashes in Russia, in Israel. And so one of them actually had they were human. They found with oxygen apparatus. So if anybody wants the 13 pages, all they have to do is just message me through my website. I'm happy to send it. It's free. So so when we piece all this together and we see, okay, So he's talking about this. We have whistleblowers here talking about that. We can say, all right, well, some of the grays are not, they're hybrids, and they're mixed with us because they've been abducting humans and taking human eggs and human sperm and skin grafts and stuff to create hybrids. So the grays are kind of like, someone had said this, and this is I think it was one of the Nordics or one of the human ETs, anyone can have a gray. Kind of like we have computers, all right, or cell phones. So they're commodities. And so I don't put too much credence on them as because they do as they're told. And as I proved in my first book about when people invoke the name of God, when they're in the middle of getting attacked or abducted by a gray, they seem to drop you like a hot potato. So what's that about? That means that they respect the hierarchy. And just as the Bible says that demons will tremble at the name of Jesus and Yeshua, well, who are the demons? So this is another big piece. I know it's very controversial, is that Christians have half the story. So it's a half truth. So you must hear this all the time. Oh, all these aliens are just demons. That's all. But that's not true. That's a half truth. So and this is on my blog, if anybody wants to go read it, spirituallydiscerning.com. All demons are aliens, but not all aliens are demons.
That makes a lot of sense because you're right. In the comment section of videos, many times I will see someone say that ETs are just demons.
Yes, and this is a very dangerous belief, mantra, narrative to put out there. And again, let's go back to history. We have to learn something from history. And the Jews are like the canary in the gold mine. That's an analogy. When the miners used to put the canary in the gold mine, and if the canary came out alive, that means that they were okay to go in. And if it didn't, that means that there was toxic gases. Okay, just for context. So Jews have already been gassed because from the same narrative that the Jews were demons, the Jews were lizards, the Jews were serpents, the Jews needed to be exterminated and genocided off the face of the planet. Why? So people have to ask why. Most of these people that they call Jews, that the 6 million that died in World War II, they were from they were, some of them weren't even religious. The Nazis, Hitler wanted to genocide the Jews. He didn't care what you believed, whether you believed or you didn't believe. So you have the Jewish religion and then you have the Jewish race. Okay. So like when people say to me, oh, you're not Jewish because you believe in Jesus, it's like, okay, well, if I was living in World War II, they wouldn't care what I believed. They would just gas me anyway because of my genetics, because of my heritage. Does a Black person stop being Black when they believe in Jesus? So Jews have gotten lost because of the persecution, and they're jaded, okay, and there's a lot of wounds there, religious wounding, which is why they reject Christ, because of what Christians have done to them. I get that, okay? But that doesn't stop me from whatever my DNA is, it is, all right? So this is a big piece again. It's like here we are back in 2025. Happy New Year, by the way. And here we are, and we're having this conversation again because anti-Semitism, Jew hatred, is up. In fact, it's at the same level as where it was in the 1930s. And that's very scary. Why is that? Because of the Muslims, okay? Because the Muslims are still out to get the Jews. And nobody wants to talk about this, but this is what the end time prophecy is about. So it's a confluence of things. It's alien disclosure, which comes out of Israel. The book of Revelation says that there's going to be beings that are going to come out from inside the earth. It literally describes them. Okay, there's several different groups of beings. They're not all the same. So some of them are demons that that God orders them out of the earth to punish the wicked. That's their job. Okay, and they're ordered to leave the grass alone. So don't hurt the earth. Okay, just go after the wicked people. So he's using this to judge and to punish. Then this is why we can't have this narrative of all aliens or demons, because this creates another form of bigotry like they did with the Jews, because then there's these human beings that come out from inside the earth too. 12,000 from each of the tribes of Israel. So for years, oh my God, I don't want to waste your time and tell you, but I can't tell you how many people have said to me different things about this, the 144,000, because I'm a Messianic Jew, and like, oh, they thought I was. I'm like, no, I'm not one of them. Okay, these are beings that it says very specifically in the book of Revelation that human beings that are sealed. Okay, and they are brought out only at a specific time in this 7-year tribulation, and they play a role to stand, to hold the space, to hold everything for the God of Israel in the land of Israel at this time. These are not like people like me or other messianics around the world that are living on the surface. I believe this is part of the breakaway civilization that coexists with us inside the earth, and they are brought up to the surface at that appointed time, just like the book of Revelation says, which is why we can't have that narrative, all aliens or demons, because then you'll be demonizing God's people. And why would Christians want to do that? And these are people that it says very specifically, there's 144,000, 12,000 from each of the blessed tribes of Israel, because there was one tribe that got cursed that's not in the end time prophecy. And they represent God in this end time battle. And then there are the 2 prophets. They're also human, okay, but they're superhuman. So think Avengers, okay? think those movies. They shoot fire from their eyes. This is the book. This is what it says in the scripture. Okay, so because we have movies, we can imagine this. It sounds very sort of like a Marvel picture, but they kill them in Jerusalem. It says they lie dead in the street. The whole world sees it, of course, because of, we have the internet and TV and all of that. And then after, nobody touches them, it says, and then after 3 days, they come alive again, and they start shooting fire from their eyes, like laser beams, at all those who go against them and the other people of God in the land of Israel at this time. These are ETs. These are, this is another race of beings. We can't call them demons.
Do you think AI is going to play a role in the end times?
100%. Yes. I think that the Antichrist is going to wield this alien technology and artificial intelligence, especially with the one world government and the one world currency, because the currency is all going to be controlled by the AI. But the third part of the prophecy, Jeff, is the one world religion. And that's something I got to tell you, I've had a hard time getting my head around. How can there be a one world religion when we have people in the same religion that can't even agree on things? Okay, not to mention the warring factions between, all the major religions, Jews and Christians and Muslims, and it boggles the mind. And there's only one answer as to how the Antichrist pulls that off, and that is through the alien reveal. So, which is connected to the Vatican. And I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Okay. When I started looking at this, I was like, what? Oh my God, this is wild. Of all the entities and institutions on Earth, okay, the ones who thought the Earth was flat at one time, or that the Earth was the middle of the universe, and and they hung people and they burned people at the stake for, look at what they did to Galileo and all these people, and now they're the ones that want to lead the disclosure narrative. Like it's in the movie Contact. You remember the movie Contact, where they fought over who was going to be the point of contact when the aliens, when they connected? That's who the Vatican, that's what they want to be that. And I just published this in my 6th book, Heaven's Witness, and I pulled all this doctrine. I couldn't believe it, that they had written into the Vatican, the official, church doctrine from the 1950s about policies on dealing with aliens and extraterrestrials. I mean, this is called exopolitics. And the Vatican is just, they're all set up. They want to be the point, and they have the 2 of the world's most sophisticated telescopes, which they name Lucifer. One is on Vatican Hill in Rome, and the other one is on Mount Graham in Tucson, Arizona. And they're both run by these 2 Jesuit priest astronomers who together wrote a book called Would You Baptize an Alien? And that actually became church doctrine. Recently, they have put this into church, and that's why this Pope, Francis, is like, yeah, of course I would baptize him. Well, did anybody even think of asking if the aliens want to be baptized?
Well, I think recently someone in the Vatican has come out and said that ETs are also under God as well.
Yes. So that's, that's the positive side, is that people are starting to like reevaluate their doctrines and how they've looked at things. So there's a lot of change there. Some of it is good because we do have to expand our consciousness, because religious beliefs have been, let's face it. I mean, all these wars, the past 2000, the whole age of Pisces, the processional age of Pisces that we're getting ready to close, is all about this religious piece. Okay, the time. I mean, they changed the calendars because of Christ, right? But the Jews didn't. So they're still counting. We're at 5785 now. And they believe that they're in the 6th day. So it's like the 6 days of creation. So the Bible talks, it's like a primer. 1,000 years is like a day unto the Lord, and a day is like 1,000 years. So suffice to say that the 6 days of creation was actually 6,000 years, Earth years, but 6 heaven days. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
so the Jews think that they're in the 6th day. And when they finish the 6,000 years on their calendar, that begins the 7th day, which is the Messianic age, which is when we rest. So there's a lot of truth in this, but this is why I wrote this recent book, Heaven's Witness, which is about astrology, astronomy, and time and calendars. And I found, oh my goodness, they changed the calendars so many times. They deleted years. Even the Jewish calendar, which is really closest to the most astronomically correct because it's solar and lunar together, whereas the Gregorian calendar that you and I are living on, this is January 2nd of 2025. I mean, maybe it's not, because there's no astronomical relevance to the Gregorian calendar. Okay, so that was done by Pope Gregory. And here's another dot about the Antichrist. The book of Daniel says that the Antichrist will change the times and the seasons. Well, that's what the Church of Rome did when they created this calendar. Okay, 2,000 years. The Jews have always, because Rome oppressed the Jews and they rejected so much of Jewish doctrine and Jewish beliefs and Jewish scriptures, because they manipulated and they edited the Bible, and they only took certain pieces, not other pieces. I mean, like in the books of Enoch, I mean, Jesus actually quoted out of the books of Enoch, but yet they didn't put that in the Bible. So that's part of my work, is to piece all this stuff together, because, the Church of Rome does not represent who God is, because they've been warring against the God of Israel for all this time. So this is a holy war. Okay, and they have somehow aligned themselves with the serpent. So you asked about the alien races. So the serpent reptilian race is now completely, it's in the Vatican, to the point that it's in the architecture. Okay, so if you look at the Pope's assembly, the building, it's built like the head of a snake. The word Vatican means divining serpent. It in Latin, it comes from this ancient goddess called Vaticanus, okay, who was this serpent goddess. So you wonder, like, where do they get all this stuff from?
You've told us that the Dracos, the reptilians, and the Greys are the bad guys. Who are the good guys?
Great question. Okay, well, so we have what we call angels. All right, so the Bible has the word malachim in Hebrew, which basically means messenger, and that got translated through the Greek angelos, which is where we get the word angel from. So when people hear the word angel, immediately, most of us, because we've been conditioned since childhood, is that we think of these beings with the wings, and everybody's all kind of fluffy and, halos and stuff, based on the medieval and Renaissance artwork, right? We're all imprinted by that. But the specifics, the literal of what is actually in the scriptures, is that every single time these beings showed up, they showed up as men, human men. Okay, there was only one instance in the Old Testament where it was a female woman, a human female. So these are humans. Okay, they manifest whatever they really look like. Only God knows. But every time they come to earth from the kingdom of heaven, the ones who are part of the heavenly hosts. So the word Adonai Tsebaot, which means the Lord of hosts, okay, which literally translates to commander of celestial armies. Okay, so we have to imagine that the king of the universe, and let's all not forget that every single prayer in Judaism, okay, starts with the same sentence: "Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe." So, who is this king? So, I believe that this king is Yeshua. Okay, he is the Moshiach Nagid, which in Hebrew means Messiah, King. This is written in the very stars themselves. This is what my sixth book, Heaven's Witness, is all about, is this ancient astrology that predates the written. This was what was given to the ancients before they even had books. They looked up in the sky and they saw the different star pictures, and they were able to identify different groupings. There is no coincidence that there's 22 major constellations. Okay, there's minor ones, and there's 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And those 22 letters are pictographs of the 22 constellations. So let's call it a cosmic language. It's a star language, which is very specific. It's a language of physics. And it tells us that this whole story that most of us know based on the Bible of salvation, okay, was written into the stars before the Bible was even written on earth. That tells me something, okay, who the king of the universe is that his plan is for salvation. And his plan is for salvation for not only us humans, but also these other beings that he created, that he's allowed them to live and fight and war. Why didn't he put them down? Why didn't he obliterate them all? Why didn't he, you know, kind of dissolve it in the last galactic war? Because, and these are things that are beyond us, and I don't pretend to know it, but I surmise that it has to do, based on the prophecy, with a point, that he is making a point of how fair, how just, how righteous, how compassionate, how merciful he is. And by allowing all this time, allowing this to play itself out, defines that by saying, well, I gave you all these chances. I gave you all these lifetimes. I gave you 3 wars. And this is where we're, you know what I mean? There's a bigger picture on top of what we are living through right now.
Should we prepare for the end times? And if so, what should we do?
Well, I think the most important thing is your soul. Okay. So your soul, as long as your soul is right with God, with the Creator, it doesn't matter. I mean, because we're all going to die eventually. Okay. So people have to just prepare for that. Okay. That's probably the number one preparation. The physical stuff, well, yeah, I mean, people have to prepare, for hurricanes and blizzards and that kind of thing. I mean, getting off the coastline, I think, is common sense because of what's going to happen with, the rising waters. I mean, the hurricanes, the underwater earthquakes. I mean, the earth is going to shake. There's no question about that. So, I just think that we have to focus on our soul because we're here for a reason. And here's another piece I want to share this. And this is why I wrote this book, The Cosmic Slingshot, because the end time prophecy says that all these people are on the earth when Yeshua returns. And it specifically says in the book of Revelation that they look upon him as he's coming out of the sky. The whole world sees him and his army, his celestial army of angels, the hosts of heaven coming in these cloud ships. Okay, so can you imagine this? And the whole world sees this. And then it says that those who are on the earth at this time, they will mourn as they see him coming upon the one whom they pierced. Those are the exact words. And that scripture is in Revelation and in the Old Testament in the book of Daniel. And how is that possible? So this is what got me down these rabbit holes. How is that possible? Because the one whom they pierced is another biblical vernacular for crucifixion. Okay, so if how is that possible when he was crucified 2,000 years ago, and all those people who lived on the earth back then are dead? How were they on the earth when he returns? There's only one answer to that, and that's reincarnation. And that's what the Church of Rome has took away from Christians. So Christians have been programmed not to believe in that, but it's actually false because I prove it. It's throughout the entire Torah, it's throughout the entire Bible. Jesus talked about it. The disciples talked about it. It's in the book of Job. It's all over the place. Okay, so he allows, so if you just can get your head around that for a while, that he allows all these people to come back, to reincarnate at the time of the end, so that they have one last chance to repent, because that's who God is. That says more about him than it does about us, right?
Yes. Earlier, you mentioned some of the prophecies weren't fulfilled. Can you share with us which ones aren't?
Yes. Well, we don't know who the Antichrist is yet, so that hasn't been fulfilled. But we feel like that's close because of the situation in the Middle East. So it says that he emerges on the world scene to end the war, which hasn't happened yet because the war is still going on, and it could even get worse before that happens. So that remains to be seen. The third temple needs to be rebuilt.
Where is the third temple?
So in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount, so there were two temples. They were both destroyed. So the prophecy says that a third temple is going to be erected in exactly the same spot because it has to do with a portal, is an ancient portal. And right now, the Al-Aqsa Mosque sits on that spot, and it's kind of adjacent to the Wailing Wall, which is the last piece they have from the old temple. And there's ongoing battles between Muslims and Jews there over that estate.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that it's a portal because I believe in Islam, that's where Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven, was in a
That's
cave
right.
underneath there somewhere.
You got that right. And so that's why it's a convergence and a confluence, and it's multi-layered because you have three of the world's major religions converge there, and they all have these similar beliefs.
After the wars and the 7 years of tribulation, do we come to a point where we're living in some sort of golden age where this is utopia? And so, do you think that people are trying to speed this up so we can get there finally?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Yes, I mean that is the promise, is that when when the Moshiach Nagid, Yeshua, the King, when he returns, he sets up his kingdom on earth, and that begins what the Bible calls the millennial reign of Christ, but it also begins the age of Aquarius and the golden age, as you mentioned. And it does also say that the curse is going to be broken. So the curse on us, the curse on the planet, which all goes back to Genesis, all those curses that were doled out, and that we will live to be 1,000 years old again. Okay, because our life expectancy maybe goes up to 120 based on the telomeres. But back in the old days, people lived to be 900, and Methuselah lived to be 969. And then after the flood, everybody they genetically downgraded and manipulated our lifespan. So that's a piece of it. And it does say that when he returns, that there will be, all this stuff is going to just be gone. The wars are going to be gone. There won't be any sickness. There won't be any illness. It'll be like the Garden of Eden. It'll be paradise on earth. But when he returns, he raises the vibration of the planet. So it says that he becomes the sun, the light of the world, that we won't even need the sun anymore, our sun. And there will be no more darkness. So it's heaven on earth. It literally is heaven on earth. And yes, I think a lot of people are expecting that. And if they're in positions that they know and they understand the prophecy, the problem is, Jeff, is that there's different belief systems operating at the same time.
Well, you've basically written 5 books on this topic and more. The latest book that's currently out is called Heaven's Witness, and you have another one
Yes,
coming out in February, hopefully, right?
yes, the cosmic slingshot, which is I'm connecting dots to reincarnation in the Bible, alien abductions, and the end time prophecies. And a lot of that, like I was saying to you earlier, has to do with these pieces. It's not the whole enchilada, but it's a piece, helping people to understand how these prophecies can come about, how people could be on the earth when Yeshua returns that were there when he was crucified. How is that possible? Only reincarnation can explain that.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
Yes, book 7 will come after that, probably in the summer of 25. I had to split the books. So book 6 is all the astronomy and the time and the calendars, and then book 7 will be my final book of the series, which is called When Heaven Comes to Earth. And that's the quintessential end time prophecies.
Well, if people want to learn more or ask questions, should they contact you on your website?
Yes, thank you. Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo.com. And I'm also on Facebook.
Well, before we wrap it up, can you give us a last positive message?
Well, I think that, we have a lot to look forward to in terms of what's to come. But we just have to stay strong. And I think that relationship is what strengthens us. Relationship to God and our relationship with each other.
Ella, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest again.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.